Hey everyone, J-Rob Plays here, and this week in Destiny 2, it is actually Sword Week. And the reason I say that, and that not going with heavy metal, for example, is because most people are not exactly happy with the heavy metal playlist. It's got its problems, and I'll go over that in a little bit when we talk about kind of tips and tricks on how to get your wins. And wins are going to matter because the wins are going to get you a higher score, which is going to get you a higher chance of getting your weapons. And if you grind it based on my videos, you're going to be 450 or close to 450, and it's still important to try to get there at least this week if you have the ability and you're in striking distance. That way you can farm out a tier 5 sword, because this is going to be the only sword that's got the new weapon bonus, the new item bonus, that's allowing you to get better prime drops regardless of what people say. It's been my experience that having all new gear gets you better prime drops, and some people would just rather did more runs faster to even that time frame, and they were getting a little over 1 prime an hour, where I was getting 2 to 3 primes in the earlier hours, and then going down to that same little over 1 prime an hour until the prime cycle kind of kicked back in, and I was getting 2 or 3 primes in that first hour again. So I was getting slightly more primes over time, and it added up to where I caught up to people who were ahead of me in the prime grind, right? So it was worth it. Back then, it was worth it to get all the Solstice stuff at tier 5, all of the Crucible stuff at tier 5. Crucible just rains tier 5s on you, and you'll still be getting a lot of these Crucible items. Like I got a really nice Last Discipline Bond, farming for the sword, with weapons and a weapon tuner. So going into the sword, though, again, we're going to have Eager Edge, we're going to have Sharp Harvest, Attrition Orbs, and Proximity Power. Those are all fantastic to have as a backup to Eager Edge. And if you're using it for actual damage, Sharp Harvest with Burning Ambition is fantastic for printing special ammo for your special ammo weapons. And most people are going to be running Mint Retrograde, which is really strong. So if you are basically dumping out DPS or damage with Mint Retrograde, you can switch to this sword, print some more ammo for it. The ignitions are going to help as well, print some ammo for it. And that's basically the gist of the week, because the week is trying to get this within these few days that we have. Today is going to be Wednesday that the video should be going out, and you have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, right? So 5 days left to try and get yourself your God Roll sword, or as close to the God Roll as possible. I've kind of stopped playing for a little bit because I've got as close to as God Roll as possible, but I did grind it out the first 2 days. And on the Trachiness, I may still try to get the busted mag here. It's the assault mag. It's accidentally getting too much RPM, so you actually have like a lot of chill clip procs or precision instrument procs. So if you can get this kind of a roll with the assault mag, that would be your ideal kind of god roll. And of course, you can get it all together if you got the assault mag, rhyme stiller, chill clip, precision instrument, rapid hit like that. That's kind of a god roll in itself, with good range, and it's already got good base range, and it reaches out pretty strongly on kills. Cross put out a video today as well, kind of going over that. It's actually pretty solid compared to like some of the high-end slugs. It's not going to be the best, but it's close. And if you don't already have one of those high-end slugs, if you don't already have something that's got a lot of range on it, like the Trials of Osiris slug, you're not going to be too disappointed with the Treacherous. But now let's go ahead and talk about the heavy metal itself, the event, the way that it works if you're new to it. So in the portal, you come into here, just like Arms Week, you have an event here on the side. Every day you get new bounties. So these bounties are going to vary. Some are going to be complete matches, win matches, pick up your targets coins, pick up your teammates coins. In this case, just defeats targets. You can defeat them with an advantage, streaks, stuff like that. And then this is just for winning matches or completing matches, and this will give you the most coins. Now, the coins are important if you're not 450, but you're close and you have Guardian rank 9, because you can still get tier 4s from these rolls. Every 100 coins, you can get a tier 4, and you can guarantee that you at least get a shot at this sword extra that you didn't already have. Now, you can still get the swords and the hollow foil. I'm not really too interested in these, though, because the roll is not a good roll. It's subpar, and same thing with this one here. They just look nice, so they're really just infusion fodder. I'm really not necessarily too intent on finishing the track. You can already get the Infernal right away, which gives you horns and a tail. You can get your emblem pretty fast, so it's not something that you have to, again, kill yourself for, unless you need like one Ascendant Shard toward the end. But for me, I'm probably just going to get the emblem and then maybe be done with it, but because I've already got my sword. And I may every now and then, if I get some extra time, try to get a slightly different roll with Surrounded or something like that on it, but I'm pretty much set. And so I hope you guys can also get set for this week. And again, I hope those are 450 that are watching this can also get set. And make sure that you're going into one of two ways to actually get into here, going into the Crucible in the portal and heavy metal this way, or you can go here and you can go to the play now and heavy metal this way. If you launch from the tower, I'm sure everybody's already seen this, but just in case you haven't seen it yet, if you launch this heavy metal from the tower, it's going to be giving you old rewards. So make sure that you're launching it from the Crucible tab in the portal or directly from the event tab on the play now section, or you won't be getting the higher in rewards. And don't worry if the sword doesn't drop. Like for your first 4 or 5 games, I was getting with shotguns and I was worried the sword wasn't even dropping. And then in my 5th game, boom, I finally got a sword. And then I think my 6th or 7th game, I got the sword that you're looking at now. So let's get on to now the tips, now that you know how the event works, and we'll talk about the specifics between the two. I'm going to start with the Brigs because the Brigs have some advantages I want to go over, so let's go to that now. So of course, loading into the game, you have to watch the cutscene. I wish you could skip the cutscene if everybody could just click something to skip through the cutscene, because every single match that you load in, you're going to have to watch the tanks roll in, the Brigs run in, and it just eats up time in your grind. It's just kind of like a cheap way to increase time, player engagement, stuff like that. Bungie's always been notorious for. I'm sure that's part of it. So with the Brigs, your special ability is going to be your class ability, essentially. It allows you to dodge side to side very quickly or back and forward very quickly. Your alternate fire attack, and that's going to be like if you're using your alternate fire that you have to bind in your key binds for like the tank, the Drake tank, the same alternate fire that you use for the Drake tank, and it'll be like specifically bound to the Drake tank fire. You have to make sure you have that bound because some people don't. That one is going to open up your screen, and that's going to then give you like a tracking lock-on mechanism. From there, you're going to release it, and it's going to fire your alternate fire weapon. Sometimes you also have to click the fire button. It's a little bit buggy on the Brig. It's not exactly super smooth. The tank is a lot better, but essentially it's like a large plasma ball, similar to the ball that you fire, but it does more damage. And you want to try to make sure that you're either as close as possible when you use it, or you're using it on a target that's like standing still, stationary, unaware, because it does a huge chunk of damage, and you can catch them by surprise. So let's say you just killed somebody and you're picking up the coin's going to heal you. So that's one thing to know in heavy metal, is picking up the coins from your enemies will give you a bump of health, and your target is going to think, oh, there's an easy target because now they're low health. I'm going to take them out because we're going to trade back and forth shots, and I'll have enough to kill them before they kill me. But then you hit them with the big plasma ball, takes almost half their health sometimes when you pair that up with your shot, and now it's on even ground. And so when you're a Brig and you're coming up against the Drake tank, what you're going to want to do is pay attention to the cadence of the shots and count out your shots, because the tanks are only going to be able to shoot as fast as you can shoot, and so you're actually going to count out, and that's going to be like a 1001, 1002, 1003. Once you get to 1003, that next shot's getting ready to come out. So like at 2.5 or at 3, depending on if the tank is still maneuvering around you, that's when you're going to want to time your dodge when you're engaged in close combat with a tank. And for your shots, you're going to want to make sure you're leading your shots. So if it's stationary, that's easy. You put the target on the tank, and the tank's got a big body. It's easier to hit because it's got a bigger wide side profile, so that's one of the disadvantages to the tanks. They're also not very good maneuverability-wise, and they get stuck on the rocks and things a lot. There's a lot of places where they can fall over, and when they get a boost and they go up in the air and they're flipping up in the air. Now keep in mind, a good player on a tank can flip around in the air and still hit their shots. So don't think that a tank that's flipping around in the air is a easy target or a vulnerable target. As you approach them, it'll still be able to do damage to you. And a lot of these players that are good at the tanks are going to use these ramps to try to get extra momentum so that they can kind of do these maneuvers where it's hard for you to hit them, but they can actually hit you because of the way the shots work and the tracking works on the tank when it's in the air. So that's one thing to watch out for on the tank side. But the Brigs, again, they have a smaller side-to-side profile. They have a better ability to kind of three-peak, stand behind a mountain, and they're going to be able to reach and shoot and then hide easier and faster than a tank can. And so when you're in that back and forth combat, you can count that 1, 2, 3. You can use that 3-second time to just get around the corner and then get your shot back again, and then you shoot your shot as the tank is rounding the corner, and you can clip the tank and get some damage in before they can. Your dodge should be back by that point, and then when they get to the point where they have a line of sight on you, finally they're going to want to fire. You dodge toward them in the direction that they're trying to shoot, but like past it to where the tracking won't catch you, because there's a time travel delay between your bullet hitting the target that you're shooting at, and you can actually force a dodge where you're still close and you follow up shot with either your heavy attack or your regular attack, and you can finish that target. So that's kind of the way that you want to try to approach this. You want to play with your teammates, of course. It's really tough sometimes when you get teammates that are just like out for themselves, or they're just running around by themselves. They'll constantly be responding and going in to fight all 3 tanks by themselves. players that play together are usually going to win the match. If you have 3 good Brig players together and 3 good tank players together, the 3 good Brig players are usually going to win that match just because of the advantages that the Brigs have. So part of the heavy metal, again, is praying that you get on the Brig team. That scenario that you're looking at where you're the 3 good Brig players, you group up, you try to flank. If you see a bunch of tanks are going after one of your Brigs and that Brig is still full health and they're not in danger of getting killed away from you where you can't recover their coin, take some time to go around the side of the tanks and try to pinch the tanks. Also, since tanks are not very maneuverable, try to physically pinch them if you can by stepping in between where they can try to retreat and the person that they're fighting, so they'll have to back up into you and then they won't know what's going on. The next thing they know, they're stuck against your Brig and you're able to fire straight down onto them and they can't do a whole lot about it. Even if they boost, they're not going to go nowhere. So pinning your target is also another strategic way to win a fight. And especially if you're playing against aggressive players, you're going to have this trade-off where you're both going to die, but who's going to win first? All you got to do is make a miss once, make sure you time and hit your shots, and you'll end up winning and getting the coin. Sometimes that just means that you're going to pick up their coin and then get killed by another teammate from their side, and they're going to get your coin, which sucks, but at least you don't give them your coin without getting a coin, and you're not giving a negative to your team. And that's another thing, is that if you are low health, like you're like one shot, I know it sucks losing, as far as like losing any of your fights and you never want to die, but what you can do is you can body block for your teammate. If a shot's going to hit your teammate from a distance and your teammate is right next to you and they're not like terrible, you can body block, die, put your coin right on top of your teammate, so they all have to do is strafe to their right or left. They pick up your coin, the other team doesn't get any points, and then you get a new mech to go out there and wreak havoc. So that's another kind of higher level tip, is to try to make sure you're dying in an advantageous spot when you don't have a lot of health. If you're not going to be able to kill 2 tanks and pick up both coins to get back a reasonable amount of health, then just get yourself killed by defending your teammates with your body. That way they pick up your coin, and then of course you help them get their bounty done if they need to pick up coins. And again, picking up your teammates' coins is key. You want to make sure that you're being a team player, but you also want to make sure you're not leaving coins out there for the enemy team to pick up because you're too busy doing something else. You can even use your boost ability that you use to go side to side to dodge shots, to actually close distance and to pick up coins quickly. That's what I tend to do. I tend to try to save my boost for when there's a coin on the ground and I can get in there and snag it before one of the enemy can get in there and defend the coin. And so those are going to be the high-level things with the Brig that I would recommend. So again, just to recap, aim ahead where they're going to be, not where they are. You want to make sure you lead them by about half a tank length on either side, depending on the motion that they're going. You can also use peek shotting, just like we do in PvP. You peek around the corner, you hide, shoot again, you peek around the corner, hide, shoot again. You have your 3-second window in which another shot's not going to come, so you can count 1, 2, 3, and as long as you're clear of that area, you're not going to get hit. Just make sure your shoulder's not sticking out, because you can still get hit from your shoulder. That's one of the disadvantages of the Brig, is their height. They can actually get hit from their upper area a little bit easier than a tank can. A tank can get underneath your shots. And so those are going to be the things. You want to pin your target, play with your teammates, cover their coins, die in a good spot, and as long as you do those things, you should win most of your games, as long as you're obviously on the Brig side, because basically getting a Brig is getting a huge advantage in my opinion, and you're going to win most of those games. Now let's get over to the tank side and try to figure out ways to negate the Brig's advantages and kind of try to still win tank games. I even had the best game that I had playing in heavy metal in a tank versus a Brig, so it's still possible, and we'll talk about that right now. Alright, so rolling out in the tank, first thing you want to try to do is you want to try to get to the sides of the map where you have mountains, so that way you can hide in the mountains. The tanks have the ability to shoot through smaller areas, and the boxes do a good job of guarding your frame, and so you can actually get shots off a little easier side to side than a Brig can as far as lateral motion, because you're faster side to side than the Brigs are. And so that is one of the tank advantages, is moving side to side quickly. One of the disadvantages in that is that the controls are terrible. Whoever designed these controls designed them with one part of the tank being the face and one part being the rear, and if you rotate the tank to where the face is the rear and the rear is the face, then your whole directional capabilities change, and you have to continue to push the button of the direction in which the tank is going. So if I was pushing W to go straight, and then I turn to look to my left, now I have to push D on my keyboard, which is to the right, to maintain the right direction. But if I turn slightly the other way, then it's back W again at an angle. And so you're constantly having to balance W, D, and A, and then sometimes you have to go back with, you want to try not to be stuck backing up, but sometimes you have to back up with your S key. But I don't know if you've ever played the game like QWOP, where you're a runner and you have to like constantly be balancing the keys to try to keep the runner on his feet because he's always falling over. That's how I feel like the tank is. I feel like the tank is just like a constant balance of keeping your keys to where you're going the direction that you want to go without getting stuck on a rock or a piece of the environment, like a little pipe sticking out the ground or one of the supply caches, because that's the biggest disadvantage with the tank is the terrible directionality and the kind of the speed at which you're going side to side hampers that, because you can get stuck very easy. You can fall off things very easy. You flop around a lot. But when the good advantage is that even when you're flopping around, you can still fire and your shot goes where it's supposed to go for the most part. So that's one thing that I mentioned in the Brig videos. A lot of good tank players are going to get boost, and they're going to boost off of edges, and they're going to boost off corners, and they're going to get to the point where they can get good at flipping the tank around while still doing damage and kind of controlling the flip. It makes it hard for the Brig player to hit you, and you can still hit the Brig player. And so that's kind of one high-level tank thing that some people will do. I'm not too big of a fan of it. I like to just kind of control where I'm at. I like to try to pin the Brigs for my teammates, just like a Brig can pin a tank. You can actually pin the Brigs with your wider body and keep them from escaping your teammates. And so what I tend to do is see where the Brigs are going, try to get a good flank, and then I try to take advantage of my secondary attack. And so the alternate fire on this one, very similar to the Brig, will open up your fire and give you the little targeting diamond. However, in this case, you don't fire a single pulse that's like a big chunk of damage. You fire a bunch of micro missiles that do a large chunk of damage, and they're actually pretty darn accurate, and they're fast. They're much faster than the fire rate of the pulse from the Brig. So what I tend to do there is I tend to kind of rush my targets, and when I can get in close, that's when I use my alternate fire in conjunction with my main fire to do like almost half their health. So just like with the Brig, you can catch people by surprise, or with the tank, you can consistently catch them by surprise. And as you get coins and you get kills, you'll get that back. And so you want to try to make sure that you're doing your best to flank and take advantage of your faster firing ability for that 1-2 punch of the missiles with your normal shot, which is still like a 3-second countdown. But that's the scenario that you're going to be doing with the tank, is you're going to be still leading your shots. You don't have to lead quite as much because the Brigs are a little slower side to side, but you still need to lead by about a Brig body wide if it's going in a certain direction and you want to hit it. And as long as you're like about half a Brig body or a Brig body away leading wise, you should hit your shot, barring that it gets the environment blocking it from something. You want to make sure you're saving your boosts to dodge the Brig's attacks. Same thing, you can count to your 3 and then boost over and over again to dodge the Brig's attacks. If you get in close to the Brig and you kind of get behind it and you can maintain staying behind it, it's kind of hard for the Brig players sometimes to rotate fast enough to catch you. Maybe if you're playing a controller player or something like that, they may not be able to get behind you. And then, of course, pinning against another teammate or against a rock is a good, strong way to take out weak opponents. So if you find somebody that's already weak, you're going to want to put the front of your tank in between their feet so that they can't move side to side, and you're going to just shoot the feet at their floor, and you should be able to get that kill if you have the health advantage and if they've already used their big pulse. That's the only danger, is that you open yourself up to big damage, and if you take that big damage and even if you win, you can still get cleaned up by the other teammates. And so just like I mentioned with the Brig, you want to try to die next to your teammates if you're low health and try not to allow a free kill. And then, of course, you want to try to help low health fights from your teammates and make sure that if they die, that you're getting the cleanup kill so you can go grab both coins. And that's just like a general tip. But as far as the tank goes, those are kind of the main things that you want to do on the tank, is to use your side-to-side capability to get around the Brigs. You want to try to surprise them the best you can. Save your rocket attack for when you know you're going to make contact, and try to make sure you follow that up immediately with your actual shot. Try to make sure you don't allow low health targets to get away. Since you're faster side to side, you can actually chase quite a bit and keep them from getting away. Even if you're getting shot at from behind by another player, you can usually do a pretty good job of timing your boost so that you can keep getting away from them while chasing down the weak targets. So kind of you're like the hunter in that scenario. You see a weak target, you're immediately going to go for that weak target. Even if it's a better player, you can probably still win as long as you're timing your shots. Make sure you don't get over anxious. If a person dodges you once and you completely miss, you want to make sure that your next shot it's imperative that you take your time and hit it, because if you miss 2 shots and you don't have a way to get away, you're pretty much dead and you're feeding the other team at that point. That's gonna be my last big tip, is do not feed the other team. Just like I mentioned earlier in the Brig video, that you have bad Brig players that just run in 1v3, you have bad tank players that do the same thing. Either they're too timid and they're trying to like shoot from the back of the map and they don't get involved in team fights, or they're the opposite. They'll spawn, run in there and die, spawn, run in there and die. If you have that happen, obviously you can't help that necessarily on your team. All you can do is do your best to get in there and help them, and if they die, at least you get the cleanup kill and you try to get their coin. You basically are forced to be aggressive if you have that kind of player to try to win, because if not, you know you're just going to lose, and it just resign to that at that point. And if you don't get higher score, you don't do well yourself, you may not get tier 5 even at 450. If you get like a super bad score and like the bottom, you'll still get like tier 4 drops. So the whole goal here is to get tier 5 drops. Do your best, take your time, pace your shots, get your A score so you can get your guaranteed tier 5, and hopefully you get out of this week with a good Eager Edge sword. As long as you get a sword with Eager Edge, that's a win. You know, I wouldn't necessarily sweat too much trying to get the good stats with it. I just got lucky that the 3 on the left column that I wanted, I got. But, you know, hopefully you'll get at least 1 out of the 3. I wouldn't go too crazy and kill yourself, because this is a frustrating game mode, especially if you're on the tank side, because the tanks, again, I feel like are at a disadvantage. But do your best. Try to make sure you're doing personally good, even if it's at the expense of the bad player. You know, it sucks sometimes that you have to bait bad players like that, like we talked about, and you know that they're the bad player, they're the one feeding, but in this case you can still bait them and try to clean up any kills that are easy based on the few hits that they may get in before they die. So at least you can make some use of them running in there and dying over and over again, and try to even out or negate those deaths by your good play. So other than that, though, if you guys have any questions or struggling with anything, you have any weird glitches or anything that haven't been addressed in a lot of the larger creators videos, just drop me a comment below. That way I can maybe make a follow-up video if we have something that I can kind of test out and prove. If you've got any good tips yourself, that's like something like a super broken strat that you yourself can do, that I can then also relay later on and try it out, I'll be glad to do that as well. Thanks very much for watching the end, and I'll see you guys in the next video.